All right, welcome back, everyone, for part two of our deep dive into the housing situation here in Australia.
Yeah, we really opened a can of worms, didn't we?
We did. It's a big, complicated, messy can of worms.
It is, but hopefully we shed some light on things in the last part.
I think so. Yeah, we're starting to see the big picture now. So where do we go from here?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about foreign investors. Are they really to blame for driving up prices and making things unaffordable?
Yeah, it's a common complaint. You always hear people saying it's the foreigners buying up all the property.
Right, and it's easy to point the finger, but is it really that straightforward?
Yeah, I'm skeptical. It feels like a scapegoat sometimes.
It can be. Foreign investment does play a role, but it's not the sole cause of the crisis.
So it's more nuanced than just blaming foreigners.
Exactly. Even if we restricted foreign investment, it wouldn't solve the problem.
Yeah.
We still have all those other issues we talked about, limited supply, those tax incentives for investors, and the lack of affordable housing options.
Right, it's like a multi-headed hydra. You cut off one head and two more grow back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to address those underlying issues if we want to make a real difference.
Okay, fair enough. So let's move on. We talked about rent vesting, but what about good old-fashioned house sharing? Does that actually help people get ahead, or does it just delay the inevitable?
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic Aussie tradition, right? Sharing a house with mates or family.
Yeah, it's definitely common, especially in the big cities where rents are so high.
Right. But does it actually help you save for a deposit faster?
It's a trade-off, really. You might save on rent in the short term, but you might also be delaying your ability to save a bigger deposit. And of course, there's the issue of privacy, having to share your space. Yeah, it's not for everyone, that's for sure. Some people love it, some people hate it.
It really depends on your personality and your goals and how long you're willing to live with other people.
Okay, so it's not a magic bullet, but it's an option. Let's talk about the big one, now owning your own home.
The Aussie dream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Design it exactly how you want it.
Yeah, you get that brand new factor, everything's fresh and modern, and you don't have to worry about someone else's dodgy renovations.
But I imagine it's a lot more stressful than just buying an existing place.
Oh, especially in this market. Construction costs are going through the roof. Supply chains are all over the place. And finding a decent builder these days is like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
You're dealing with builders and architects and permits and council approvals.
Don't even get me started on council approvals.
Yeah, it can be a nightmare. And there's always the risk of delays and cost overruns.
And you need land to build on, which is not exactly cheap these days.
That's true. Land prices have gone crazy in many parts of Australia, so that adds another layer of complexity.
Okay, so building has its challenges. What about buying an existing place then?
Well, it's usually a quicker process. You can find a place to make an offer and move in relatively quickly.
And you might be able to find a bargain, especially if the market cools down a bit.
Yeah, sometimes you can get more bang for your buck with an existing property.
But you might end up with a place that needs a lot of work.
That's the risk you take. Older homes can have hidden problems, things that need fixing or renovating, and they might not be as energy efficient.
So you got to factor those potential costs in.
Exactly. And it's important to be realistic about your expectations. You might have to compromise on certain features or be willing to put in some work yourself.
Right, so there's no clear winner. Both building and buying have their pros and cons.
It depends on your priorities, your risk tolerance, and your budget.
Okay, let's move on to another key player in all of this: property developers.
Ah, yes, the big bad developers.
They're the ones building the houses, right? So surely they're part of the solution.
Well, it's not that simple. Their primary goal is profit, not necessarily creating affordable housing.
Right, it's a business at the end of the day.
Exactly. But are they doing enough to address the needs of everyday Australians?
That's the question, isn't it?
There's been a lot of debate about that. Are they building enough affordable homes, or are they just focusing on luxury apartments and high-end developments?
And there's that whole issue of land banking.
Yeah, where developers hoard land to artificially inflate prices.
That doesn't sound good.
It's a problem that needs to be addressed through stronger regulations.
There's a bit of a balancing act, isn't it? Encouraging development, but also making sure it benefits the wider community.
Exactly. It's about working together, developers, government, and the community to create a more sustainable housing market.
Okay, so with all these challenges, is there actually any hope of resolving this crisis? What are the experts saying?
Well, predicting the future is never easy, but they do have some insights based on current trends.
So give it to us straight. Are we all doomed?
Well, it's not looking great. Affordability is going to remain a challenge for the foreseeable future. There's no quick fix. And those factors driving the crisis, like population growth and limited supply, They're not going away anytime soon.
So it's a long-term problem.
It is. But there are things we can do to mitigate the worst of it. The experts emphasize the need for a multi-pronged approach.
Like what?
Well, we need to increase the supply of new homes, but we also need to make sure those homes are affordable.
So not just building more of those luxury apartments that no one can afford.
Exactly. And tax reform is crucial. Addressing things like negative gearing and capital gains tax could help level the playing field.
So close those loopholes that favor investors.
Right. We also need to invest in social and affordable housing options. And we need to look at the bigger picture, things like population growth and the concentration of jobs in major cities.
So it's about taking a holistic view.
Exactly. It's a long game, and it will require effort from everyone. But with the right policies and the right mindset, we can create a future where owning a home is a possibility for more Australians.
Okay, so we've spent the last two parts, digging into this housing crisis, trying to understand why it's happening, who are the players, what are the factors. But now it's time for the big question: what can we actually do about it?
Yeah, that's what everyone wants to know, right? What can I do to make this situation better for myself?
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like what can one person do to solve this massive problem?
It's true, but I think the first step is just changing your mindset. Instead of feeling defeated, try to approach this with a sense of empowerment.
Okay, so don't just give up and resign yourself to a lifetime of renting.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, right? The more you understand about the market, the better decisions you can make.
So do your research, educate yourself. Don't just bury your head in the sand and hope it goes away.
And don't be afraid to think outside the box. We've talked about rent vesting, house sharing, looking at different locations. There are options out there.
Okay, but let's get down to brass tacks here.
Yeah.
What about those of us who are renting right now? What are some practical tips for surviving this crazy rental market?
Well, it's tough out there, that's for sure. Competition is fierce. But there are things you can do to improve your chances.
Right, give us the inside scoop.
One thing is presentation. Make sure your rental application is well presented, complete error-free. Highlight your strengths as a tenant, your rental history, your income, any references you can get.
So be the perfect tenant on paper.
Yeah, basically. Make it easy for them to say yes. And don't be afraid to follow up after you've applied, a polite phone call or email just to express your interest.
So be proactive.
Yeah.
Show them you're keen. Hey, what about those of us who are dreaming of buying a home? I mean, it feels like an impossible dream sometimes.
I know it can feel that way, but don't give up hope. The first step is to get your finances in order. Create a budget, track your spending, see where you can cut back.
So time to ditch those avocado toasts.
Maybe. Every little bit helps, right? And set up a separate savings account just for your house deposit.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. And remember those government schemes we talked about, the first homebuyer grant stamp duty concessions. They can give you a real boost. Make sure you check if you're eligible.
All right, so tap into those resources. And what about rent vesting? Is that a good option for first-time buyers?
It can be. It's not the traditional path, but it can be a way to get into the market, especially if you can't afford to buy where you want to live.
So just to recap, rent vesting means you rent where you want to live and buy an investment property somewhere cheaper.
Yeah, you're basically becoming a landlord yourself. And the rental income can help offset your living costs.
So it's a long game. But it could be a smart move.
It could be, but do your research, make sure you understand the risks and the potential rewards.
Okay, now what about those who are thinking about building their own home? What advice do you have for them?
Building is a big commitment. It can be amazing, but you got to be prepared for the challenges.
What are the biggest things to watch out for?
Well, first of all, do your research. Get quotes from different builders, compare prices. Understand the whole process from start to finish.
So don't just jump in blindly.
No. And factor in all the costs. There are always hidden costs that can pop up.
So be prepared for the unexpected.
Right. And don't be afraid to ask questions. This is a big investment, so make sure you're comfortable with every step.
Communication is key.
Absolutely.
All right, so I think we've covered a lot of ground here. What's the main message you want our listeners to take away?
I think the main thing is there's no one-size-fits-all solution. The best approach for you will depend on your own circumstances, your risk tolerance, your goals.
So do your research, weigh your options. Don't be afraid to ask for advice.
And don't give up on your dreams. Whether it's renting, buying, building, there are paths to achieving your housing goals.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Australia's housing situation. It's been a wild ride.
It has. But hopefully we've given you some food for thought and maybe even some hope.
If you enjoyed the episode, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share it with your friends.
And let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you next time.